Hey, what's up, Rumble fam? It's Dre. I'm here with Madima. We're the DMs for the first main campaigns that came out. Uh,
Woo!
I DM Estrangero, and
And I
Madima
DM the
DMs.
Between
Yeah, she
Queen.
could fucking do it herself. I don't need a DM. You don't need no man. God damn it.
I'm fully married. I don't know
Yeah.
what you're talking
No,
about.
but you don't need. You know what I'm saying? Like
Oh!
want and like and need is very different. You know what I mean?
Wow! Okay. Wild. Let's start there for a second. What is
Yeah,
the
let's do
difference
it.
for you between want, like, and need?
Look, listen, taste, touch, feel. Um, I, because you know what it is. Me growing up as a '90s male
Mm.
and living through. This will go good with the D&D stuff. Me growing up as a '90s male, right, and
Uh,
living through the cancel culture era, but also me realizing like didn't have to be this way. Like not on
yeah.
the like bad version, but the actual good version where like you were just good. That could have been taken both ways, like evil and good. But I'm saying like if you were just decent people and like communication, like why not? What a thing, you know?
So, like, whenever it comes to storytelling like that, when you're thinking about stuff that you grew up with, like, what were the things that you think you wanted versus the things that you liked that existed? And then what caused you to realize what you needed out of storytelling?
For sure. All right, I'm gonna be like super transparent.
Get it?
It was inspired by that movie Easter Sunday by Joe.
Really?
Because look, say what you want about the movie, and I probably
Right.
have, but I'm saying he made the movie he needed when he was a kid. And I feel
Hmm.
like we all make the content we needed, our younger selves needed.
Ooh, that's a good point.
Right. And in storytelling, right, I also was in the pandemic with everyone, and I also bought a masterclass membership. But so I watched Neil Gaiman's because, like, GOAT, right? He
Yeah,
said
absolutely.
the characters' decisions and actions are always driven by their wants,
Hmm.
but they always get what they need. And that's like a
Yes.
cool thing, right? And so is life, I think.
I agree. You
Yeah.
know, I think the thing that I always like to keep open in my mind whenever it comes to storytelling in that same vein is just kind of like, hey, what's something that I didn't know about that now I do know about?
Yeah.
What am I gonna do with that knowledge? Like, do I share it? Um, do I try to like make better sense of it by applying it to a story that I try out in real time? Like,
Mhm.
I think so much of what brings about a lot of confusion and chaos for people that like when the world around them doesn't make sense, like you turn to story a lot and you're like, well, okay, how did this person make sense of the senseless?
Right.
Like, I think right now a big one is like Wicked is one example where it's like,
Yo, I just saw Wicked 2 days ago.
did you? Okay, okay,
Yeah, first time.
yeah. Oh. But like, okay, so like the original story, right? The original
Yeah.
source material is the book The Wizard of Oz. It was
Hmm.
written in a time that the U.S. was coming out of like the Great Depression, and like the New Deal was the biggest thing that was coming out, and there was so much symbolism in that story that has to do with like Middle America. That's why Dorothy's from Kansas, and like where does she go? She goes to an emerald city that's lined in like the way to it is lined in gold bricks.
Hmm.
And what are the shoes? Her original shoes in the original book, she had silver shoes that were able to take her home. It was
Hmm.
during that time that the U.S. was like coming away from like the silver currency that we used for like fiat currency for like real world money and transitioning it to the gold standard. Most of that decision making was being made by people that were in Congress in the far, far east of the United States, but they were pretty out of touch with the regular working man, which were just like farmers that were populating the rest of the country. The author of The Wizard of Oz was making an allegory to like, don't believe everything that these people that are in power, that have this money, don't believe everything that they say. Because they want to, ultimately, they just want to use you for their own end. And that's whenever the writers and like the lyricists behind Wicked took that idea and like formed it around the Wicked Witch of the West and saying she was also a victim of the system. It wasn't just that she was preying on Dorothy, because she really wasn't. Dorothy's not the villain. The wizard is the villain.
Yeah, yeah.
And then like move it from like the Wicked book that then moved into the stage show that then moved into now the movie. You see that those themes get more and more pronounced as time goes on.
Yeah.
And weirdly enough, it's profitable now. Somebody was telling me like, oh, it's like, yeah, it's like profitable to be woke now, and I'm like, ow.
I mean,
I don't know how I feel about it.
here's the thing: you can feel good because we're not profiting yet. We're not making shit right now. No, it's cool because you know, as you get older, you do realize the best forms of art were allegories for real life, like X-Men, and it's
X-Men's a huge example.
yeah,
Especially in the Asian community.
right.
Especially in the immigrant community. Shit. like what's you like out of all the X-Men? I'm sure you guys have talked about this on Van de Sol, but
no.
like no, all the X-Men, the whole array, all of
Magneto.
them.
Oh, Magneto.
You think that he's the most Filipino?
Oh, most Filipino.
Yeah, like most, or rather, like most Filipino coded. And it, like obviously everyone's always going to be like, oh, well, like Jubilee is like our Asian X-Man, and I'm like, yes, I understand, but which one of them like did you identify with as a Filipino person who was like, this is my person?
Here's the thing: it wasn't because of his Filipino-ness. It was because of, I think it was the power thing. Most Filipinos Gambit for sure. Just
Yeah.
Come
on.
He walks around in a dusty brown coat. Of course, I mean, like, and it's like he never changes his coat.
Never, dog. Same one every time.
Yeah, I think like I would always get in these arguments with like who was the best X-Men, and it was always Jean Grey a la Phoenix versus Magneto, and my number one argument was like, yes, to be funny, but also it's real. He's like suffered is not the right word. He's gone through the hardest of hardships.
Yeah.
Right? Like, who else has survived the Holocaust? You know?
They don't talk about nobody else going through the Holocaust like that, the way he did. Shit, it was wild.
Yeah. And this kind of circle around to why we do this Rumble Roll thing, right? Where we can take real life stuff and explore them through these stories. And I'm only one of the DMs, right? Like, and everyone has their own intention with telling this specific story. Your specific story, for example, like Between Queen, is very different from Estrangero, right? And I think my intention is I get to take the stuff that people don't understand around this culture, and I get to present it in the way that I feel is best to... Right? Because they always talk about representation as in tell your story, right?
Right.
And it's like, tell your story to be truthful. But in my, like, kind of frame of reference, it's like, I'm going to tell the story of my people that puts them in the best light. It's going to be truthful, but under the lens of like, fucking humans mess up too. But here's something you can connect with. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Where I'm not going to be like, oh yeah, Filipino people are the best, and everyone else can go eat a dick. I'm cussing too much on this. I'm going to stop cussing it, but you you know how when people think of representation, a lot of it is like, oh, we're better because
Mm.
we were the ones that
Ooh.
never got shine, so we have to be
Mm-hmm.
better. And in my head, I'm like, yo, let me just tell the story. Whoever connects with it can realize that, hey, we're not better. We're all the same, actually.
Love that.
Yeah.
Yeah, like
Um,
I think you did a really great job of like having a wide array of like because I think like the trap of stereotype that people often get into whenever you start looking at representation is like then sometimes you have to get to the point I hear it a lot of just like you have to get to the point where you first show up, right?
mhm,
And I'm like, that's true. I get that. And there has to be people that are willing to like make room
yeah.
in order for you to have the platform to show up. But then once you're there, moving the needle even further of just being like, cool, how can I further show you that I am not that different than a regular person you would pass by on the street? And at least in this country that we grew up in, like, I'm not different from a white girl. Like, that's kind of, at least for my baseline, right?
I'm also not
Um,
that much different from a white girl. Just let me put that out there.
are you sure?
I love Sabrina Carpenter so much.
Oh, that's great. No, that's good. No, we collect between the two of us. We know who the whitest girl we know is, and it's Magic MC,
He's
and
a
I love him for
Vietnamese
it.
dude. Yeah.
He's a Vietnamese dude, and he can't get enough of that sweet, sweet Goo Goo Dolls. Iris is that man's jam, and I love him for it. Every time I hear him sing it, I'm like, now, see, this is America, actually.
Yeah.
This is
this
America.
this is the American dream right here.
100%. Because it's
To
just
see a,
it's pure joy, and he
yeah.
has no like extra qualms about like oh I shouldn't like the Goo Goo Dolls. He's like nah man, this song slaps.
Yeah. It's like seeing we have a friend. It's like seeing Eric Escobar sing super bass.
You love to see it.
Yeah. Um,
I'm
that's
here for it. You know, and like it's you never want to put anybody on blast for like this country is so interesting in the fact that you can enjoy so many things from so many people because you live in your regular life surrounded by them. So
mhm.
when you get to hear story and like what you said, like you get to humanize them even further by showing like every facet of humanity, both the good and the bad. It's really awesome because then you
Yeah.
can just find easier connections. I
Mhm.
agree with you on that part. So like with Estranguero, right? Like doing it from the pre-colonial lens, but like there were always these little things for season 1 that were like connecting to like your childhood or pop culture that you loved, right? X, our jeepney, but pre-colonial jeepney driver X
Yeah.
was huge in that, in the fact that he was a through line specifically for that.
That's interesting.
Um,
He was a very like made up on the spot. I'm just like, okay,
yeah,
we need a mode of transportation somehow.
and then the bit every single time that you did, every single time we mentioned his name, he was like, "Go who like what was it?" X, and then somebody at the table would say, "Go and give it to him,"
Like,
and
I'll
then
give it to
somebody
you. Yeah.
and you would respond with, "Fuck what you heard."
Yeah.
Like,
Oh, I love that. Like there, you grow up and you attach to some lines. You know what I mean? And you're like, this is mine, and it can be everyone else's, but like
but this
whenever
is
I get the
mine.
chance to do this is mine, right? That's one of them. Just because high school DMX was like so popular
Huge.
amongst my Asian friend group for some reason. But yeah, I think X is dope. I like when NPCs get like their own life. You know,
Oh yeah,
it's just because like as a DM, you got to be everyone, but also take care of everyone.
a hundred
So
percent. Okay, so okay, I think I can remember the thread that we had last time that I was wanting to ask you about for like Estrangero
okay, okay.
and like connecting it to there's things that you connected it to your childhood, but there's also things that obviously, like, you weren't alive during the pre-colonial times of the Philippines.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But, like, what sort of other context informed, like, the story that you wanted to tell? Like, what was so important about pre-colonial Philippines, but also still having that flavor of Dre Magics in the story you were telling?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I was having a conversation with a friend, and she said there's no recorded history of the Philippines that predates Lapu Lapu, which messed me up. Um,
Whoa, I did not know that.
yeah, and it's interesting because it's very, first of all, it's very sad because our country is like just like a mix of invasions and colonization, whatever. Um, but because I had the upbringing I did, where it's like, okay, I was born there. I was never like, I've never felt where home is. You know what I mean? Because like, my parents would always
Yeah.
go, "Oh, I want to go back home." I'm like, "Back home? I thought we were home." And then I'm an adult, and I'm like, "Yo, this doesn't feel like home." And then I go to college. I'm like, "This definitely does not feel like home." Um, it's a version of a history that I have that I get to rewrite because I never knew it. And like, we always make the joke that, oh, you're DM, so you're God. You're the GM, so you're God. If you're God, create the universe. And wouldn't you create it the way you want? Like, yes, create it.
100%.
Yeah, for sure, right? Like, of course you're not going to create it perfectly because there has to be evil. There has to be good. But you get to navigate where the balance is.
Absolutely. And I think it's like even comparing Estrangero and like what depending on when this episode or when this podcast comes out, like what happens in Between Queen
Yeah.
is that I decided to kind of do a little bit of that, do a little bit of reclaiming the narrative of a big impactful year that was 1966 within like the Philippines itself, like what it was going through, just as the first Marcos regime was happening.
Mm-hmm.
But then leave the fate of this, like if you're familiar with like history and you know what went on in the Philippines during that time, and then how things just really really went bad as the Vietnam War was continuing and we were basically right next door. I wanted to try to make a world where I challenged my players to be like, can you change the course of history
Yeah.
by interacting in this world and making it better?
You just messed me up. I have an idea. I have an idea.
Okay.
Okay. Hear me out. So, you know how we're like GMs and we're rewriting history, blah, 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 right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I think a cool thing for Rumble Roll will be like, the GM does not get to rewrite history. The GM can only put the PCs in a position where they have to write history.
That's exactly it. Bye. He just leaves camera. No, but that's for real. That's the real human condition. That's what
Right.
we in real life do all the time. Will you be able to change the course of history either in the smallest of ways or in the most impactful ways?
No.
Like what decisions are you going to make in your day-to-day life that then impact the world around you or just even like the people in your life? Like I think that if I was walking around with D&D stats, my wisdom would be high. Yeah, dude. 100%. My wisdom would be high, but my charisma would be pretty mid. Where it's that like I have a lot of intuition that I garner from like vibe alone, but then the way that I navigate through my life is like la di di ho di dum. Like I just don't really have. I don't think of many consequences before I speak. I simply speak, and then things happen or they don't. Like it's a real problem I have.
Yeah. I I think it's the context where I always see you, though, dude. I
Yeah.
you know what I mean? I think charisma is one of your big stats. I think wisdom's one of your big
Really?
stats. Yep. Um, I mean, yeah. I think if you were to be one of the traditional classes, right? Because like,
Hmm.
especially in that Sina Una book, it's fucking Babaylan is so OP that I'm like, yo, you get
Yeah.
everything. Like I saw it and I tried to build one and I stopped because I'm like, yo, this wouldn't be fun because you get all the powers straight up.
Straight out the
Like,
gate.
yo, too strong. I
Ugh,
think I would.
too strong.
And everyone would be like, oh, you're a bard because you do music. Nah, man. I think for real, if I were to cast you as a class, also because it'd be fun for me and I'm an asshole. Whoo, dude, barbarian.
Are you
Yeah,
serious?
yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
oh God. Low wisdom, but all the
No,
strength.
but
I'd actually have
like
fun.
a barbarian. The stats. It's not really attached to the thing. You can be a wise
Yeah.
barbarian. Uh,
Oh, okay. Like a la Gorgug
yeah,
in like Fantasy High junior
for
year. Yeah, yeah,
sure.
yeah, yeah.
I'd
Like a
either go.
barbificer.
There you go. Yeah, it would either be a barbarian or shoot. What was the other thing I was thinking of? No, not that. Not that. I have the book. Why am I tripping? Hold on. I'm under so much pressure. You think of your
No, I
answers for
can.
me, but
Yeah, if okay, it's all about like introspection, right? Like how do you actually see yourself? I think that most people knowing that I do music would be like, "You're a bard," but I think in my heart of hearts, I'm more in
paladin.
line with like that's what it is. That's exactly what I was gonna say.
Yeah,
Is that I think that I am more of a paladin than I am a
yeah.
bard
But
personally.
I think your oath is to the people.
Oh yeah,
You're very
that
good.
actually feels correct.
Oh yeah, for sure.
No,
Um,
and for you, I think you are like tried and true. I know it's cheesy to say. I
all
know
right.
it is.
Let's just get
But
this over
like
with.
I'm sorry.
It's
I
fine.
think that like you in real life are like wizard sorcerer vein, right? Where it's that like high intelligence, burdened by knowledge as well.
Yeah, that's real.
But like if we were going like traditional stat blocks and things, I think that like your ability to just kind of literally conjure things and like productions and people and projects out of almost nothing, that to me I'm just kind of like, okay, yeah, that's a like yeah, that's a conjuration wizard, or it's even just as far as just kind of like that's a sorcerer of just naturally gifted with the ability to create,
Dude, I'm just so good
and
at
then just like
failure.
the know how to like connect it.
That's what it is. I'm just good at failure at this point, which is fine.
But
Um,
also, you give me rogue energy.
oh,
Like
definitely.
you and your personality gives me rogue
That's
energy,
the one I
big time.
wanted. You don't see the head
Yeah.
thing? I have
No, that's the one I can
I
feel.
have other hats. I choose this one.
No, but like, and like, the thing is, like, rogues often, uh, I think rogues have like the street smarts and have like the self preservation thing going for them that can be really beneficial when they're by themselves. But you are often in the company of so many other people that I am not inclined to think that you're rogue. I think that like you see yourself as being a rogue, but you are to me like more in the line of like conjuration wizard or even like transfiguration wizards of just being able to like make one thing and turn it into something else based off of like your influence. But that's just me.
Did we just become best friends?
We have been best
Okay,
friends, you
cool.
silly goose.
um, no, I mean this can go and it will. This is gonna be a long. This is gonna be a long end because it was supposed to be two. But I want to ask our campaigns have one thing in common, and we haven't talked about it. Where a majority of our PCs have been Filipino, but there's one PC in both of our campaigns who's like lad, right? And it's
Yeah.
my experience. Obviously, in Estrangero, it's Austin, who you kind of know. You guys
Oh
met
yeah, like
first
he's got
time.
something to do with this.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But being able to, and I don't know his history with the culture because you've been together for so long. But my thing was, oh shit, I get to give him the camaraderie between two Filipino guys, which is kind of it's a different flavor,
Oh.
right? Where it's like, you're my drinking buddy, or like I had to give him a drinking buddy, or I had to give him, someone that
Yeah.
would mess with him a little bit because I don't know
Yeah.
if he had that relationship with anyone in that kind of manner, right?
Yeah, for sure. No, I think that was I think the thing that was really cool about having that and it being like clear because you even said at our session 0 whenever we were building the characters together, you were like, "Yeah, I don't want you to pretend like you're anything other than what you are, man. Like you're Pepe Lechon.
Yeah,
You're the outsider, but you're also like Baba's like one of his oldest friends, but you live like in an isolationist world that is separate from the pre-colonial society that we have, right?"
mm,
And I think that was a really smart move to do for Austin's character, just because again, like I think the thing that you can't get away from with TTRPG, at least in the years that we've known it and seen it, you can't get away from knowing that like this is really definitively a kind of part of white culture.
yeah, for sure.
That like this is something from white culture that like they're able to say we did it, we did this.
Yeah,
But then you have like the creators behind Magic the Gathering recently put out a statement being like, I don't see why you guys keep thinking that we should only make these stories all white all the time. Because the whole point of a magical realm and the fact that myths exist beyond any place and every place in the world means that magic exists everywhere in any place of the world.
yeah.
So why wouldn't we expand the people like and bring more people into what we do?
Not just Hogwarts, you
That's
think?
kind of stupid. Like yeah, yeah. Like that's it's again, like there's if there was only 2 wizarding schools in the entire world, why the hell would it just be in the UK and the US?
Right.
It doesn't make
No, but
sense.
then there's that all
You're
girls
telling me
one
there's
in
not an
France,
academy?
and there's that all dudes one in Russia.
Why is it that?
Because
That doesn't make any sense.
because
No,
French
she
French
got it.
people are looked. UK people see French people as very feminine, and they
French
see
people can only be sex
right,
symbols.
and Russian people are bad guys always.
Always, all the time.
Yeah,
I'm like, that's awful. Ew, we hate.
yeah, yeah,
But like that's the thing, right? So like for getting Austin in there for that, you wanted to give like somebody who would exist in the world, even that would be like separated. And for me, it was completely circumstantial that I ended up casting Charlotte as Miriam, because Miriam canonically, like in the world of the Bituin Queen, she is from Sina Una. She is a Candayan resident. Like she's Filipino. But Charlotte is portraying her, and Charlotte has always reminded people, like, I am a white lady. Let's not forget that I am, in fact, white.
yeah.
And the way that that ended up coming about was like, originally, I was trying to cast a full Asian cast. I was doing my best. But it's really hard to convince your friends that are Asian femmes that have never played this game before,
Yeah.
that don't like to do improv, that think the idea of sitting down at a table and doing make-em-ups for 4 to 5 hours is an awful idea.
Right.
And so when I kept getting no after no after no, I was like, well, I do have a friend that I've known for a decade now who's been at multiple tables,
Yeah.
who is one of the best actresses that I know, that I knew for a fact that with the character of whenever I wrote Miriam, would do her justice and would not make her look stupid
Hmm.
or like I knew that she wouldn't play into Miriam being Filipino knowing that she is a white person where she was like I only have so much context because I've known Maddie
Hmm.
for a decade, but Maddie's been alive twice and then some of that. So I'm not going to do anything to jeopardize that portrayal of it.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, I would even say that a lot of the characters in the Bituin Queen, whenever I wrote them, I wouldn't necessarily classify them as being purely Filipino.
No.
The reason
Yeah.
why I chose 1966 is because there's such a heavy influence of like American culture
Yeah.
that I'm like, these characters are Filipino American, even though the setting that they're in is the Philippines,
Yeah.
because that's exactly what it felt like at like the mid um,
Oh,
20th century
yeah.
in the Philippines, is that we weren't really just Filipino anymore.
Yeah. And I think with Estrangero, we never outright said y'all were Filipino either. Like it was just
Right.
you just happen to be there, and the shit that would be a Filipino custom is also in that world. Um, and that's the beauty of the pre-colonization era of the Philippines is we don't know like who knows what was around there, and also there's monsters, man. Anything goes when there's monsters. um, I really did
Yeah.
um, enjoy, especially with Between Queen, right, where there were the influences. I mean, also the thought I had when you were talking about like pitching to like femme Asian make 'em ups was like maybe we're pitching it wrong, man. Maybe we pitch it as like a transformative weekend because they love that shit. Like real talk, find your inner strength through fantasy
Yeah.
play. Oh, um, yeah. Going back to like having your campaign be this cultural identity. I don't think it's needed, right? Uh, and I
Hmm.
don't know. Maybe it's D&D. It's going to develop as you go along, right? We can't write the whole thing and have it be so on script because then it's not a game anymore. One of my questions to
Nope.
you as a DM was like, we have to create all the NPCs, right? We have to create all these things and like put voices to stuff when you want to try and make them as different as you can. But I know when I was creating mine, I had to put a piece of Dre into each one because like that was my frame of reference, right? Whether it be playing, Datu Reina or any of the Buas or X. So my question for you is, did you do that with yours, or were you just like okay, let's make something out of nothing? And did you realize what I was doing when I was doing it?
All right. To answer your first question, I would say that only some of the NPCs in the Between Queen have elements of like who I am.
Yeah.
Like there's a NPC Candy that like the way that she behaves is like very unsure of herself, of the world like around her, and that's definitely a version of myself that existed whenever I was younger.
Mm.
And maybe I was like around the age that she is an NPC what that is in the world. But then there's other characters that like I don't have any frame of reference of in my own life, like Mateo. Like Mateo Danso is just a boisterous a
You know a
hole,
bunch of
but
Mateos. I
I've
could name them
known
in real
boisterous
life.
a holes in my life.
Yeah.
But that's the thing, right? Like I like a large part of me, the thing that made it easy for me to like color the world a little bit more was that I would pull things from my life rather than like from myself. That I'm like, okay, I need somebody to be an overbearing parental figure. Let me play that for like Ashley's character Venus. Let me play like an extreme version of that I've seen in my life for like somebody who's like a stage mom that I've witnessed. But then I juxtapose that with like Kay's character Janine, her guardian is also a helicopter parent. Like Ken Gubatan is a helicopter parent, but he's a dad who's concerned.
You know.
And like that concerned dad and the momager come from the same place, but they're not the same person for me.
Yeah, yeah.
And that I've witnessed.
Word.
So like in some ways some of the NPCs were me, in a lot of ways a lot of them weren't, because I don't think I am that multifaceted as a person. I don't not necessarily to say like I'm not complex, blah blah blah, but I'm also not. I'm also just like a regular person. Like,
Yeah.
but I've met so many people in my life that have made my life interesting. So it was great to be able to pull references for that. For you to answer your second part of your question, yeah, I could feel that there were Dre in all these. I loved that we still had a taste of Dre for my god. Like the fact that my goddess that I pray to, I'm like, oh, she's just a homegirl. Like I'm just
Yeah.
talking to my homegirl Dre.
Because like,
Was awesome.
Wouldn't you want like, if you were to devote your life to a god, which which is like a very Filipino thing, right? Discovering who your deity is as a Philam or as a human. Wouldn't you want your deity to be someone you can talk to, like without like with reckless abandon of like, I don't want to pray to a god and be like, oh Lord God, please Jesus. Like I'm like, yo, what's up, man? Or whatever you want to be today. Like I need help, or thank you. You know what I mean? Like, wouldn't you want that relationship with the all powerful? You know what I mean? And yeah, to me, that's like my personal philosophy on fucking religion or whatever. But like, it was fun at the time, you know?
I was gonna say, I think that's like an actual nice relationship that you should have with your divinity.
Yeah.
Is that you should be able to be like, hey, I'm a little lost. Can you help? And they're like, girl, let me try. But also like, shit's fucked.
Yeah, and I think if you played it the other way, it would be just as great, but you have to do it with intention, right? Like if you are praying to a deity and they're shitty by accident, I don't think the world's ready for that relationship, because the world is so
Oh.
their partnership with religion is so close. Like those who are religious is so close that they need that figure to either be best friend or like they're out to get you. Because if it's not someone you can depend on, it's someone you can blame for your with your shit. And I think personally, when I knew there was a deity that was going to be involved, I knew I had to pick a lane. And like the accent came later. I was like, okay, fucking Jersey or whatever. But like, I knew the intention. The relationship had to be so defined, right? Because your character was so influenced by so many mentor figures and parental figures and all these things, where they kind of had to be a little bit different, each one. Um, for your campaign, I know you were having a lot
And
of.
I really
Go ahead.
sorry. I just wanted to give you your flowers real quick for Lalahon. Like I think, or even just like for me as a player at your table, um, the journey that I had with Kat was so wonderfully layered because of like how many different mentors that you put along the path. Um, one of them including like my own mother, where like even upon going through that journey and then watching it back after the season wrapped and like the episodes were dropping, I was like, yeah. Like that in of itself was another lesson that Kat had to learn. And it was also really nice to be able to go through that and portray it in a really realistic way. I think too is that like we didn't really shy away from, this is what usually happens in a real family of like you have all these repressed things and then you explode and then reconciliation comes, usually at the behest of like another family member being like, hey, I don't think that you really meant to hurt this person. I don't think they really meant to hurt you. So, like, if you guys can talk, that would be really nice.
Yeah.
And then still like things not like fully resolving, but at the same time like it being enough of just being like let like me as a character hearing from a parental figure, I need to be better and I need you to help me get better and I want to get better. That was so awesome to experience and like to witness. And yeah, truly just like put my own things in like perspective of just like how I would want to resolve certain things in my own life. So I just wanted to thank you for that.
Oh, of course, you're welcome. Yeah, kind of piggybacking off that, because we played with basically our friends who are amazing and talented, we know their personal lives. And as a DM taking our friends into this fantasy world we've built, yes, anything can happen, but there's still lines you don't want to cross, right? The boundary is a little bit further because you know each other and trust each other, but I know there are some of those things you don't want to cross, right? For example, I know if someone's going through something personally with like anyone that I'm not gonna poke at it, but I'm gonna like try and honor it or like try and got like you know what I mean. And I noticed for you,
Yeah.
without spoilers, there was a moment in one of the later episodes where like you got really close. How was it with that line, right? Because you were dealing with a subject without even knowing the person. It would be terribly, like, very trigger warning, you know. But in that sense, you knew the person very well, and
Yeah.
I think I think giving you your flowers, you navigated through like flying colors, man. But like while writing it or while improvising
Thanks,
it,
dude.
what was going through your head?
I think that large part of it is whenever you were talking about like knowing what the line is, like there, especially knowing that I had casted my friends, there are certain things that I will never touch.
Yeah.
Like in regards to like the personal lives of my players and like the things that I know that have like truly well and truly traumatized them.
Right.
I never want to like venture into that territory because I don't think that I am the person to do that to them unless they had like fully consented. Like you can tell that story, and that would be something that I would like talk to them about. But in the case of what like you're thinking about, I had like pre-written something that was like that was going to shake my players' world up even further after they had collected a lot more information. But I knew like what the line was, so I made it very intentional as to like which characters, which NPCs specifically, like something happened to them. And like what would the fallout be from that. When it came to like navigating it as we were improving it, the thing that I was really happy about in the fact that I had my friends at the table is that I knew that I could trust them to tell me when I needed to stop.
Yeah.
And that was the thing that like I had like texted the players beforehand where I was like, hey guys, there's going to be some stuff that might be coming up in this campaign, and I won't give any spoilers on the show, but like I texted them like, here are some possible things that could happen without giving away like what exactly would happen to them. And like me telling them that full like weeks out from the shoot, because I was like, I need you guys to tell me what are your boundaries? What are the things that you don't want me to touch or talk about? If you don't feel comfortable telling the group chat, like you can just text me separately.
Yeah.
You can tell me like, here are the things I don't want. And to my players' credit and to my surprise, nobody said anything other than the things that like I already knew about them. Like the
That's a
things
bit
that I already
scary,
knew were
isn't
the
it?
boundaries.
When
That
you
I
don't
was
get a
like,
response
great,
to that
okay.
message.
It's one thing, yeah. Yeah, because then I'm like, um, okay. But okay, like in the sillier fashion, there was one thing that we found out in session
Oh
that
yeah,
was like a
earlier.
big no-no. And I was like, okay. And before we started filming, I started like just like really like backspacing. I'm like, okay, we gotta cut down on the description, and we gotta cut
Right.
out that voice, and we gotta cut down on this. And like there was only like a moment that I was able to do something, and then as soon as it happened, like my players said the safe word, and I was just kind of like, yep, okay, and I'm done. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I'm never gonna go venture into that again. Uh, and now we just go through the rest of this moment, I guess.
Everything the
But
light
yeah,
touch.
like I think it's really important for you. Everything the light touches up until a certain point. Like you gotta be really, especially as somebody who is like the arbiter of the world, the creator of the world, you have to just be very conscious of what are you doing and who you are like telling the story with. I knew for one of my players there's like one major boundary that I was like, I will never put her in the position where she has to think about that.
Yeah.
That like that specific traumatic thing that occurred in her life. But also the other thing that I think I am just so proud of all my friends for being able to like go through together is I don't know. I can't tell if it's just like just being a woman in general, but grief is a big part of like almost every woman that I've met. Like it's a big part of our identity in some way, shape, or form. Having grief as something that was able to be done in solidarity at the table, where we were all kind of allowed to grieve something together, that's what made it feel to me safe. But in the same token, me as their friend, I didn't love capturing it on camera because that's the part that made me feel a little bit slimy. Not a little bit slimy. I felt very slimy, and that's why like I checked in with the players after we had wrapped. Like, there's a big reason why I wanted to. After we had wrapped, after we had gone through that thing, I texted my players. I say players, they're my friends. I texted my friends days after we had wrapped, and I was like, "Hey, I know that that was a really long day, and we went through a lot of stuff, and I just wanted to check in with you and just check on you and say like, are you okay? Are you doing all right? Was there anything? I completely understand if you feel weirded out by anything that like we talked about. I know that I had kind of vaguely prepared you guys for what was going to happen, but then we went through it and I didn't want to just leave it at it happened and then we went through the moment and we acted together and then that was it. I didn't want our relationship to be tainted by what we did in this game of make 'em ups.
Right.
And I was really grateful to all of my lovely friends just to be like, they were all just very like, I think that what I was going through was something that was like in the moment, but I was so invested. And obviously it was hard to go through it, but we got to get through it together. And like hearing from them that they said, like, Maddie, you're still my friend. I still love you. I'm like, okay. I didn't detrimentally fuck up our relationship by just going through something that was like dramatic in the story, but also very traumatic to feel like they talk about Meisner a lot of just like having real reactions to imaginary circumstances.
Yeah.
But like it's one thing to say that in theory and then a whole other thing to do it, especially when it's not scripted.
Yeah. For sure.
Especially when it's just like we're here and we're doing it.
Yeah. I was there at that shoot, and just I think how do I phrase this? Because I want to also piggyback on something you said earlier, where it's you had to change it in real time, and being able to step up to that boundary is kind of like walking the plank, right? Where you have to be confident in your own self to be able to swim or sink. You have to be, hey, can I pull this off while still being flexible? You know what I mean? There were times that moment, and then I mean there were times in Estrangero where I'm like, okay, you said something which makes sense. Let's yes and this until we find a spot, you know. So, but like me asking you to DM, I already had. I'm like, yo, she got it, and like all our other DMs on Rumble Roll, right? I don't want to toot the channel's horn, but yo, toot. All the DMs, I have full trust that they can run the game to a point where it's responsible and entertaining, right? Like safety first, number one, because culture first. We're giving we're we're giving the people a gift. It really is though, because we're we're trying to give them something they've never seen before, right? And if you take your passengers into uncharted waters, they don't trust you and they don't mess with it. So I think that really is in the whatever we're doing. That's rule one, right? You got to be safe about it because in a world where nerds are already getting beaten up mentally, you got to just be safe, and you know it's a whole thing. We don't need to get into all of that, but it's safety
Yeah,
first,
dude.
you know, consent.
Yeah, dude.
And I yeah,
Safety first.
we kind of make jokes about it where it's like, hey, consent is but it is, right? And the reason why we can make those jokes is because we're not the ones violating those fucking rules, bro. You know what I mean? um I really
No, it's so real. It's so that's so valid. Like the even within like the nerd community itself, right? Like it is so wild to see like people in the nerd community turn against each other.
yeah.
Where it's just kind of like the exceptionalism thing of like, oh, I am a bigger nerd than you, so like you don't deserve to like be a part of this or whatever. And I'm like, hey, you don't have to have that same superiority complex that those high school jocks that you hated had. You don't have to do that, actually.
Yeah, which I wanted to talk to you about this. We have a friend who in Estrangero they lend themselves to that kind of like mockery of real life and their character, right? So I was really trying to find like, hey, I don't gotta make fun of, you know what I mean? Like he shouldn't be the butt of the joke all the time because that's not fun either. And you know what I'm talking about. It's like, look, also you viewers, you probably know like they'll like ask for stuff that I'm like, okay, yeah, roll for it, but also there's consequences. So I made it a point in my head of Dre World where like, yo, all the bad stuff that happens to this dude has to be his fault and not mine. Right? So I'm gonna let him roll for anything he wants. But he has to pay the price of the dice. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's the other part. Is just kind of that's to me is the other thing that's so wild about it is like whenever you're playing this game is that sometimes it's not even up to you.
Yeah.
Not really.
Yeah.
Because then the dice have a whole other story that they want to tell, and you're like, okay, little guys, what are you talking about?
Real. Yeah, and it's just like as a DM, me rolling like garbage, and you guys just having a breeze of a fight that one night. I'm like, yo, why did I even write this fight? Like, what am I doing? Like, this one's on me. I get it. Okay. Let's all laugh at God.
Oh my god.
All right. So, I don't want us to run super late.
No, I think
go for it.
one other thing that I was thinking about with Estrangero is like clear like we talk about it often, right? At least from behind the scenes. Like we know what from behind the scenes we know what's gonna be like happening later down the line. But like in this kind of interconnected universe of like Estrangero and knowing that we have the expanding community within Rumble Roll that like exists at newbie nights.
Mm-hmm.
Like what elements of like having new people come into the space do you want to influence these like interconnected universes that exist within the stories of Rumble Roll?
Yeah.
Like, what are you hoping to expand in the universe?
Ooh, that's hard. uh, it's interesting because it's a we, it's not an I. We started Rumble Roll at a certain point in my life where I am now very okay with admitting what I don't know and having that be an opportunity to learn and grow, right? So, for example, a lot of our DMs use big fancy words, and I don't got the schoolings for it, but I'm okay with like, hey, what's that mean? Or like admitting that I didn't watch a lot of the nerd stuff growing up because I'm a different kind of nerd, right? When we made this thing, we were like, yo, let's tell one story. Let's tell our story, right? And then we got more DMs like, thankfully you agreed, you fool. You agreed to do this with me, you foolish fool. But then you told the story you wanted to tell. I think as more people come in, we're going to get new dope stories that we can build off of, right? And create the Rumble Roll cinematic universe. One of the future DMs was asking me like, hey, how do you feel about this? I want to know how this will influence the world. And I told her like, yo, here's point A, which is Estrangero. Here's point B, which is Between Queen, or vice versa. You get to play with anywhere else that's foggy, right? And the future DMs of America, future DM of Rumble Roll, they have to play off your back now.
No.
We have these 2 points, which are both of our campaigns. Whoever comes in next, they can if they want, or they pick a new spot to play in. But if you want to play with the history of the universe, you have to piggyback off of our stuff. So you can't contradict any of the things we have put out already. And in turn, if we're going to do other things in the future, now the history book has more pages written in it. So now we have to play off these things, right? Which I think is a fun game in and of itself, right? Just within, hey, it's the biggest, funnest game we all get to play together. And only the cool kids know. But also, if you don't, that's fine too.
No, absolutely. I think the thing that's so fun, right? Like, the thing that felt safe about like Between Queen in regards to Estrangero is that they were so far removed in the timeline that in my mind they even happen to be from like alternate universes.
Yeah.
Where I was just kind of like, they were so far removed from each other that they felt like alternate universes of just like, yours wasn't touched by and ravaged by colonialism, but my universe was. So like the confluence of like, if ever these universes touched, would be crazy, but at the same time it'd be interesting to know like what are the bridges that are able to connect these two worlds, but maybe even more interestingly, like how is it that they never connected, or like what led to one version existing and the other one, like which one was like the original universe, which one was the branch? Who's to say?
I think it's way more fun if we do say it's the same universe and the same. But it's like whoever wants to play in the middle has to figure out what happens in the middle to honor both. Is what I'm saying. Because, you know, alternate timeline is such a...
Oh, yeah. And we know exactly who that person is.
Yeah. Alternate timeline is such a cop-out, right? Where it's like, oh, you just get to make a new game plus on the left. No, man, there are consequences. Set them up, you know? We've been having very technical difficulties. So, one question each left. Also, I don't want to keep you for too long because, you know, life. Because I know these episodes, dude, I could talk to you about this kind of shit forever. But you go first. You go first.
I know.
You go first.
Okay. My final question to you.
Beauty and brains.
Estrangero was so like, oh man. To me, I'm also just kind of like, I don't want to spoil anything for myself because like I know that there's more story to tell. But like, for Estrangero, what is something that we didn't get into as a party that like will have bigger consequences for us, like without giving too many details away? What's something that we didn't touch on as a party, or that like part of the mystery
Hmm.
wasn't solved, that we're going to see either hinted at or explored more in like a future season of that
Yeah,
universe?
I think for when I DM Estrangero personally, I'm playing with two different things, right? One of them is I want to play with mechanics more. Um, and I'll just tip it because why not? If you listen to this, here's a reward. Um, Estrangero in season 3, which is when they come back, all the battle scenes will be fought together as a unit, meaning there is no more initiative. There's initiative in terms of like singular turn orders, but you guys will all act and think at the same time. Does that make sense? Where it's like, hey, you have your initiative orders.
Yeah, and that
Yeah,
sounds
figure out what you want to
wild.
do, and then once we have all the decisions, I'll lay it out and I'll tell the story that way. Um, I just like the idea of integrating more teamwork. There's more synergies that the PCs can get into, where it's like, yo, what if someone threw Pepe and he did his move? You know what I mean? So there's just like more. It's danger room style, right? Let's work as a team. And and based on mechanics, like
Oh,
as
nice.
the players level up, there's going to be, with great power comes great responsibility, right? So as you get more powerful, you are going to have to take into account the consequences of actions with more power, right? Like I said, oh, you're going to cast Fireball? That's going to destroy an orphanage, maybe, you know?
Ooh.
So playing in that realm, right? The consequences are real, right? So if we're talking story wise, there's a lot of characters that have a lot more backstory pockets that haven't been explored. There are also relationships I want to go deeper into. One of them, obviously, if you caught up with Shangero, is Kat and Bunso, that we're going to play with a lot. Another one is Bata and himself. Like, it's it's an idea of, you know, if your whole opus is to fight and kill, hey man, what if there is no real fight? You know? What if there's no fight at all and you're just living and you can navigate the world without that purpose, but you gotta find a new one. Um and I think choices like
Oof.
that,
I'm so
yeah.
excited for that.
Choices like that personally, is one goal, right? I want to, yes, tell the story of the modern day film, but also I want to tell the story of like shared humanity almost, where it's like it's not a fairy tale. Sometimes it be shitty, but like, hey, you're strong enough to get through it, you know? Like Bible goes west. I don't know why I said five. That came to mind in my head where I'm like, yo, his life was bad, but like hope is so strong, and being a, doing what I do for a living, that like I trade on hope, which is like shitty, but if you're responsible enough, you're cool with it. You know what I mean? Um, but yeah, I think, and at the end of the day, we're just trying to make good TV, right? Okay, my question for you is a 2 to 3 parter because I want to know so much stuff.
So, season 2 of Between Queen, if it would happen, the best way that that could happen is if, like, my players decided they wanted to come back. um, but in, like, editing the series, I've already seen where it could go. I'd want to play with, like, time after the time has passed and let my party age up and also improve their skills, and then talk to my cast of like, okay, so where do you see this particular character, your character, 3 years after the events of the Between Queen. And then once they tell me, I get to tell them what like the big story like for their next quest is, and I think it's a really good one. I think it's a really cool one personally. Did I write off all of it already? Yeah. I don't know how else to. I pretty much mapped it all out. So it would be whether or not they wanted to play with the certain like rails I've given and see what extra story we can make through that. Or if they just want to be like, hey girl, maybe find another set of characters to play with, like, I think that would work too. As far as if I can get Dre at a Maddie-led table, look, I think I had mentioned to you one idea that I had that would be a fun little one-shot. I think I'd leave that up to you if you want me to be the DM or the GM at a table that I'm managing that, like, you want it to be, like, a full-fledged story, or do you want it to be, like, just a fun little romp? I think because of, like, how lore-heavy I've gotten, I'd love to have a story that's, like, more of a softball, where it's like, oh, we'll only have, like, a little tiny bit of theming rather than, like, a sweeping narrative. But if you're game and, like, I have the time, yeah, I would love to have you at a table that I would be DMing, just so that, like, one, we get to change the dynamic, so it's not just, like, me antagonizing you as the DM, but then you get to antagonize me. I love having, like, a slight antagonistic relationship with your players at the table, because it makes the storytelling just so much more fun. And the fact that, like, when we're at a table with each other, like, when you're friends, you can trust each other, like we had talked about earlier. You can trust each other to be not only be antagonistic, but you can also, like, trust them to be really cool allies and, like, build extra story and push the envelope even further. As far as, like, what other Phil-Am themes I want to play in, you know, I chose the era for the Between Queen because it was really actually impactful for my dad and his family. My dad was born in 1966, so a lot of, like, what he experienced in the actual Philippines was him growing up in the 70s, of, like, being fully under Ferdinand Marcos's, like, thumb and marching in student protests. I think another world that I'd love to play in the Philippines, if I wanted to go, like, further back, is, like, as far as whenever it goes to, like, I'm thinking about real world history, I think World War II era would be wild to play in. It would probably be the most dangerous campaign that I would be in, like, probably the most brutal. The most espionage, I think, would be really interesting. But also, like, World War II was such a impactful time in the Philippines, and just, like, Filipino Americans, because of, like, how many different invasions were happening all at once in, like, one contained timeline between, like, the Japanese and then American occupation, and then, like, all these other little crossovers due to, like, the war, and, like, how Black Americans first came in contact with, like, Filipinos, and then having to reconcile just, like Black Americans were the first American soldiers that really looked at us and didn't see us as different from them, because they recognized the struggle that we were going through via oppression. And, like, that is a really rich story to tell, and it's something that we often talk about, but we don't, I personally haven't seen too many stories that, like, really delve into what that is and, like, how complex that is now, with, like, sentiments of, like, anti-Blackness that exist among Filipinos in the modern era. I think another world that would be interesting to play in, if not just for story, it would probably be something along the lines of Between Queen, where it's, like, kids on bikes, so it's mostly roleplay, would be, like, the Delano Grape Strike. Like, what's, like, our campaign's version of, like, Cesar Chavez and Larry Itliong meeting each other? Like, what does that look like? And do they have to be men? And do they have to be straight? I don't know. There's a lot that's within, like, history alone, that would be really interesting to me. But yeah, that's what I think. All right. Okay. So I said a bunch of stuff, and now it's time to sign off. Well, thank you guys so much, Rumble fam, for listening to both me and Dre ramble on. If you get my drift, all this ramble rolling going on, kill me. Anyways, um, thank you so much for listening, and we really hope that you guys enjoy more of what's coming from the channel. Please check out more of the stories that all of our friends have to tell. Please join us for newbie nights if you can, and we'll see you at the next table. Goodbye.